If you think you've heard every mystery there is, think again. What you're about to hear is one of the most haunting disappearances in modern history. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell, because this one will keep you up at night. It was a calm evening in May 2007 at the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, Portugal. Families were winding down after a long day in the sun. Tourists laughed softly over dinner, waves crashed in the distance, and a gentle wind carried the smell of the Atlantic. Nothing about that night felt unusual, until it did. At around 10 p.m., a mother ran through the quiet courtyard, barefoot, shouting words that pierced the silence. "She's gone. She's gone." Other guests turned, startled, seeing her panic-stricken face illuminated by the resort's dim lights. Within minutes, the entire complex was awake. The calm, breezy night had turned into chaos. Madeleine McCann, 3 years old, bright-eyed, and known for her shy smile, was gone. Her bed was empty. The window in her room stood open, and the curtains fluttered in the night breeze. No one had heard a scream. No one had seen anyone leave. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Within hours, the small seaside town transformed into a crime scene. Local police cordoned off the area, searching every corner, the beach, the nearby streets, even trash bins. Dogs were brought in, flashlights flickering against the walls. The McCanns, both doctors from the UK, stood by helplessly as investigators swept through the apartment, collecting fingerprints and questioning guests. The parents had been dining at a nearby restaurant with friends, just 50 yards away from where their children slept. They had been checking on the kids every half hour. But sometime between 9:05 and 10 p.m., something, or someone, entered that room. As detectives combed through the apartment, confusion turned into frustration. There was no sign of forced entry. No clear fingerprints. Only a partially open shutter and a child-sized bed, left unmade. The case didn't just feel like a kidnapping. It felt like a ghost story unfolding in real time. By morning, news of the disappearance had spread beyond the resort. Television crews arrived, cameras rolling, reporters speaking in hushed tones. It wasn't long before the case reached the British press, and Madeleine's face appeared on every front page. Within 24 hours, her image had become known around the world, a symbol of every parent's worst nightmare. But behind the headlines, detectives were already divided. The local Portuguese police suspected a break-in gone wrong. Others believed it might have been an inside job. The McCann's friends, who had been dining with them that night, gave slightly differing accounts of who checked on which child, and when. Those tiny inconsistencies would later become fuel for years of speculation and suspicion. Detective Goncalo Amaral, the lead investigator at the time, began working around the clock. He ordered searches of nearby construction sites, interviewed employees at the resort, and requested the border guards to be on alert. But each lead seemed to go nowhere. Witnesses reported seeing a man carrying a small child in pajamas near the road that night, yet descriptions didn't match. Days turned into weeks, and the resort that had once been a cheerful family getaway now carried a heavy silence. Tourists avoided it. Locals whispered. Posters of the missing child hung on every wall, every lamppost, every cafe window. The whole world wanted answers, and yet, none came. In the McCann's apartment, investigators found something unsettling, the signs of a normal evening abruptly interrupted. A child's favorite toy left on the bed. A pair of sandals kicked off by the door. A half-empty glass of wine on the table from earlier that night. Everything seemed frozen in time, ordinary, but disturbingly wrong. Meanwhile, the investigation began facing intense public pressure. The Portuguese police, overwhelmed and under scrutiny, started cooperating with British investigators flown in to assist. Tensions quickly rose between the two sides, each accusing the other of missteps. Evidence was questioned. Witness statements were reinterpreted. It was chaos disguised as procedure. And then came the first real break, or so they thought. A local resident reported seeing a suspicious vehicle parked near the resort days before the disappearance. Another claimed to have seen a man watching the McCann's apartment earlier that week. Theories began to multiply, painting a tangled web of possibilities, from child trafficking to organized crime. But none of them could be proven. The case was spiraling into one of the most complex and emotional manhunts in modern history. The world wanted a villain. The police wanted a lead. And the McCanns just wanted their daughter back. But late one night, nearly 2 weeks after Madeleine vanished, something unexpected appeared. A piece of evidence, overlooked until now, was found during a routine re-examination of the apartment. It was small, almost insignificant. But it didn't belong there. And once detectives noticed it, everything about the timeline of that night began to shift. Because that one overlooked clue suggested that someone who was never supposed to be in that room was. The clue was small, so small it could have been missed a dozen times before. A faint trace of something that didn't belong inside the McCann's holiday apartment. It wasn't blood, not a fingerprint, not a toy. It was a tiny fiber, found near the bedroom window, a piece of material that didn't match anything in the family's belongings. When the forensic team logged it, the room's atmosphere changed. What seemed like another dead end suddenly became the spark that reignited the entire investigation. The Portuguese police called in specialists, and within hours, new tests were being ordered. The fiber was consistent with material used in a rental car that had been spotted around the resort several times before the night Madeleine disappeared. Detective Amaral was cautious but intrigued. "If we find the car," he said quietly to his team, "we might find who took her." The search widened. The nearby roads were combed. Locals were questioned again. Every rental company in the Algarve region was contacted. The more the detectives dug, the stranger the case became. A British couple reported seeing a man fitting the earlier carrying a child description get into a dark vehicle, parked near the intersection leading away from the resort. But when the police checked traffic cameras, none of the footage matched the timing. Back at the McCann's temporary residence, the parents were unraveling under the pressure. Journalists camped outside day and night, their cameras flashing at every curtain movement. Television anchors debated theories endlessly, some sympathetic, others cruel. The investigation was no longer just about finding a missing child, it was about controlling a global media storm. The British investigators who joined the case started noticing inconsistencies in how evidence had been handled early on. Fingerprints had been smudged, items moved before proper documentation, and statements from witnesses taken days apart. In the confusion, key details might have slipped through the cracks. Or worse, been misinterpreted. As tension mounted between the local and foreign teams, Amaral pressed on. He returned to the apartment one evening, alone. The walls were bare now, stripped of all traces of the family's stay. The faint echo of his footsteps seemed to fill the silence. He stood by the open window where the small fiber had been found. The shutters creaked slightly in the wind. He could see the restaurant where the McCanns had eaten dinner that night, so close, and yet so far. Then came the second shock. Forensic tests from Lisbon arrived days later. They had compared samples from the rental car, the one the McCanns had begun using weeks after the disappearance, and found faint traces of biological material inside the trunk. It wasn't conclusive, but it sent shockwaves through the investigation. Suddenly, suspicion turned inward. Theories that had been dismissed before began resurfacing, painful, personal, and divisive. Detective Amaral, facing pressure from every direction, didn't know what to believe. The public began turning on the police. Protests formed outside the station. Media headlines screamed contradictions, one day praising the search efforts, the next accusing incompetence or cover-ups. Across the ocean in Britain, the story dominated every major channel. Everyone had a theory. Some believed it was a planned abduction. Others whispered about something darker, an accident perhaps, hidden under panic and fear. But no one knew for sure. Weeks turned into months. The resort emptied out. Tourists stopped coming. And yet, the McCanns stayed, refusing to leave without answers. They organized searches, distributed posters, worked with private investigators. Their daughter's face appeared on billboards, airports, and newsstands from Portugal to Los Angeles. Then, a new development broke the silence. A woman vacationing in Spain reported seeing a small child who resembled Madeleine at a gas station near the border. The tip seemed credible enough that both Portuguese and Spanish authorities mobilized instantly. Border cameras were checked, vehicles identified, and one, a van matching the witness's description, stood out. The van was traced to a man who had worked briefly at the resort's maintenance department, someone who had gone missing shortly after the night of the disappearance. His name appeared in the resort's employment records, but hadn't been flagged earlier because he'd used a false ID. Investigators raided his last known residence, a small, isolated house near Lagos. Inside, they found stacks of old newspapers, a half-burned phone, and items that tied him loosely to the area. But the van was gone. At the same time, British investigators cross-referenced data and found that a call had been made from the resort area the night of the disappearance, to a phone registered under a fake name, but traced back to the same region where the van was last spotted. Suddenly, the mystery expanded. The disappearance no longer seemed like the act of one person. There were hints of a network, organized, silent, and professional. Detective Amaral gathered his team late that night. "If this lead is real," he said, "we might be dealing with something far bigger than we thought. This isn't just about a child going missing. It's about who wanted her gone, and why." The room was quiet. Every detective knew what that meant, that this wasn't an isolated tragedy, but possibly part of something darker. Meanwhile, back at the McCann's apartment, Kate McCann stared at the photograph of her daughter taped above her bed. Her husband sat silently beside her, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. For them, every hour without news was unbearable. But what they didn't know was that the new lead, the one everyone was hoping would finally bring answers, was about to open a door that no one expected. Because when investigators tracked the van's movement across the Spanish border, it didn't vanish into thin air, it led somewhere. And that somewhere was about to reveal a secret buried deep within the investigation, one that would turn the entire case upside down. The van had crossed the border into Spain, but that's where the official trail ended. No toll records, no CCTV, no border logs. It was as if the vehicle had vanished into thin air. But one Spanish detective, Luis Ortega, noticed something strange. A nearby service camera, partially obstructed by construction signs, had captured a blurred image just hours after the reported sighting. The picture showed the rear of a vehicle resembling the same van, but with a different license plate. The plates were traced to another car that had been scrapped months earlier. Someone had gone through a lot of trouble to make the van disappear. Detective Amaral flew in to meet Ortega personally. Together, they began retracing the route from the border to a series of abandoned farmhouses along a rural stretch known for smuggling activity. Locals said they'd heard engines at night, seen headlights flashing in coded sequences. It was the kind of place where questions got you silence, or worse. As the investigators combed through one of the abandoned properties, a faint sound caught their attention, a metallic clang, like something shifting under the floorboards. They pried open a hatch hidden beneath old crates and discovered a narrow staircase leading underground. At the bottom, a small room, walls lined with discarded documents, broken cameras, and storage boxes. Dust coated everything. But one box was newer, recently placed. Inside were personal effects, passports, children's clothing, and photographs from resorts across Europe. Some photos had notes written on the back, names, dates, and room numbers. It wasn't just about one child. The investigators exchanged grim looks. This was no random kidnapping. This was a pattern, organized, deliberate, and terrifying. The discovery set off an international investigation. Europol joined in, and suddenly the McCann case was linked to other missing child reports from Spain, France, and even the UK. The van had become a symbol of something far larger, a system that had existed in the shadows for years. When the McCanns were informed of the new lead, Kate broke down. "Please," she whispered through tears, "just bring her home." But every time the investigation seemed to get closer, the trail shifted. Witnesses recanted. Files vanished. An officer who had leaked information to the press was suspended. It felt as if someone or something wanted the truth buried for good. Then came the most haunting twist. A retired Portuguese detective, reviewing old evidence independently, re-examined the van report and discovered something shocking. The model in the blurred photo didn't match the van seen near the resort. It was a different make entirely. The entire chase across Spain had been based on the wrong vehicle. The real van, the one sighted leaving the resort, had been registered under a fake company name that traced back to an offshore shell organization, connected to a British national who'd lived briefly in Praia da Luz the same year. The man's name had appeared in the case files before, once, buried in the early witness statements. He was a friend of a resort worker. Quiet. Kept to himself. Left Portugal days after the disappearance. Interpol tracked him down in Germany. When questioned, he denied everything, claiming he'd never owned or driven any van. But then, when investigators searched his property, they found an old photo tucked inside a book. It showed the resort, taken from a distance. In the frame, the McCann's apartment. The photo was dated 1 week before Madeleine vanished. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Was this man part of a network, a scout, or something else entirely? Despite the evidence, no charges were ever filed. The case grew more tangled as legal battles and international politics took center stage. Every new lead opened a dozen more questions. Every theory seemed to crumble under the weight of uncertainty. And yet, one final discovery would keep hope alive. In 2020, years after the initial investigation had gone cold, new forensic technologies identified materials found in the van's underground hideout. DNA traces, partial degraded, linked back to one of the known suspects in Germany. That same suspect had been previously convicted of crimes against children. He was in prison at the time of the discovery, serving time for another offense. Investigators announced that he was now a formal suspect in the Madeleine McCann case. But the evidence, circumstantial incomplete, wasn't enough for a conviction. There was still no trace of Madeleine herself. For the McCanns, that meant the same impossible question continued to echo every single day. Where is she? The case remains one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances in modern history. A story of media chaos, police conflict, and a family's endless hope. And even now, investigators continue to search, because in the shadows of Praia da Luz, there are still unanswered questions about what happened that night, who was truly involved, and what secrets still hide beneath the silence of that seaside resort. Some say the truth is already known. Others believe it's buried beneath years of confusion and cover-ups. But one thing remains certain: this story changed everything. Because when a child disappears, the world watches, and never forgets. If this story chilled you to the core, you're not ready for what's coming next. Subscribe, hit that bell, and stay tuned, because the next case will take you even deeper into the dark.